Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. My name is Andres Lorente.
And I'm James Rosica. Great pleasure to bring you two films about gods and men. This episode on the Two Real Cinema Club, we're going to be talking about Thor, Love and Thunder, comparing that with 1963's Jason and the Argonauts. Can't wait. Get those gods on screen. I'm going to start off, though, by reminding people if they want to find us on the internet, then they can. So we're on Twitter at Two Real Cine Club at Twitter. We're on Instagram at Two Real Cinema Club, and you can read our blogs. We've got a new blog now. We'd love it if you go and read it, which is tworealcinemaclub.com. And finally, if you want to complain about any of those links, you can email us, the tworealcinemaclub@gmail.com.
I think that's where most of the communication is going to be, the complaints to the email.
Yes, email complaints at, yes. In fact, we may have to start up several complaints inboxes. So complaints for at. Well, this is our first venture into the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So have you seen many of these films? Are you MCU followers in your house?
Not really, and I am definitely not the target audience for these films. But we did see Black Panther a few years ago, and I think that's Marvel, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very zeitgeisty Marvel, yeah.
Okay, good. I get a little confused between the DC Comics and then the Marvel universe or the multi-universes.
And that's why we can never be friends, I'm afraid. Yep. You can't confuse those two. Oh, my God. Did you read the comics when you were a boy?
Did not. Had a couple. We there was something with the Thing. Is he the big Rocky character?
Yeah, the Thing. Yeah.
We saw a little Superman here and there's some Spider-Man, but we weren't avid comic book guys. No. So
my older brother used to get like Marvel comics, and like this would have been like in the sort of mid '70s. So I would read them after him. So he got Iron Man and Thor and Fantastic Four, and so for a few years these comics would plop through our letterbox every week. So I feel like I have a little bit of connection to these characters. So it's for me it's quite exciting to see them come back. I'm not sure that my brother has seen all of the films. I think he's kind of enjoyed a few of them, but I think I've been enjoying them more than he has. So Thor: Love and Thunder, this year's Thor movie. This is number 29 in the MCU roster. Unbelievable. I had a look earlier on, and so they've been making MCU movies since 2008, and currently the box office total is in excess of $27 billion. Ooh. So this is the biggest franchise ever. It's difficult to imagine anyone beating this. Just insane. Directed by Taika Waititi. And I know you kind of wrote earlier that you were a bit apprehensive about going to see this film, and then you realized that he directed it, and that changed your mind.
Changed my mind a little bit for sure, because I did like Hunt for the Wilder People, and then there was Jojo Rabbit a couple years ago, and What We Do in the Shadows. So he's someone who I like. I enjoy the humor and the filmmaking. Now you've got in the program notes here that he did Thor Ragnarok as well.
Yeah, so he did the previous Thor film, which is kind of a bit of a departure and a kind of comedy Thor film.
Yeah.
And apparently at the time, Chris Hemsworth was saying that he was getting bored of the character and was planning to ditch it. But then had so much fun making Thor Ragnarok, the third Thor standalone long film, that he signed on for more.
Is there one that Kenneth Branagh did?
So he did the first Thor film, which is called Thor. So yes, it's one of the things the MCU have been doing is getting interesting directors. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the first person you would choose for a superhero comic adaptation. My personal theory is that Kenneth Branagh directing the first Thor is the reason why the voice of the gods has a received English pronunciation accent. And then they've had to stick with that for the rest of the movies. And, we speak proper posh English. That's what the gods speak. This film is written by Waititi and co-writer Jennifer Caton Robinson. So she's like a Waititi collaborator. Her previous notable credit was Sweet/Vicious, which is an MTV series that ran for one season in 2016, which I never saw. It never came to the UK as far as I'm aware. So I did track it down online and watched the trailer, and it actually looks terribly entertaining. It's an episodic drama or kind of comedy drama about two female student vigilantes who are out to punish the perpetrators of sexual violence on campus. So goes to some interesting places, and look like some bright and breezy fun. So that is where she has come from, and it feels like a little bit of that attitude maybe has infused Thor: Love and Thunder. So let me. I'm going to explain the plot very quickly. Like most of these films, there are so many things that the plot assumes you've already seen that when you come to these films as a complete newcomer, it doesn't spend very much time explaining what's going on, and it will drop you straight in. So I'm going to drop you straight in with a précis now. So the film opens with Christian Bale, who plays a character called Gore, someone we've never seen before. He sees his daughter die, and after she's died, he finds this necro sword, this magical sword that can kill gods. He bumps into his own god, Rapu, and murders him. And this is the beginning of his god-killing spree, which is the inciting incident for the movie. Meanwhile, Thor, having been through a lot in the last 28 MCU movies, is out fighting with the Guardians of the Galaxy, who are other popular MCU characters who make a short appearance in this movie. They get a distress call. Apparently, gods are being killed all over the galaxy. And then there's a third strand, which is Jane Foster, Thor's girlfriend from earlier films, has been diagnosed with cancer, but she is given a reprieve by uniting the shattered fragments of Mjolnir, which is Thor's magic hammer. So Gore turns up, the God Butcher. He attacks Asgard, which is now a village in Norway. He takes the Asgardian children as hostages, and Thor and his buddies, they decide that they probably can't fight Gore on their own, but they're going to go to Omnipotence City, which is the place where all of the gods live, and they're going to get help from Zeus. So they turn up there, there's a little bit of to and fro. They steal Zeus's thunderbolt and apparently murder Zeus on the way. They travel to the Shadow Realm, which is this expressionistic black and white zone of the galaxy. They fight Gore. Thor loses his magic axe, Stormbreaker, which turns out to be a very important MacGuffin. They chase Gore to the end of the galaxy, to the end of the universe, to this place called Eternity. And this is the dramatic moment that the whole film is aiming towards, because if you arrive in Eternity, then you may have one wish granted. So Thor and Jane, who has her magic powers, they arrive. They power up the children that have been taken as hostage. There's a big old fight, lots of CGI, lots of magic. Gore makes it through the altar. He gets to this galactic wishing well, but the wish he wishes for is not the wish to kill all gods. The wish is that his dead daughter will return to life. So Gore brings his daughter back, breathes his last, and at the end of the film, Thor's girlfriend Jane has died as well, and Thor ends up adopting Gore's daughter, who is called Love, it turns out, and promises to look after her. And that is the arc of the film. Having not seen many of the other 29 MCU movies, did you enjoy it? Did you come away feeling you'd understood it?
To say many of the other is overstatement. I think I've seen one of the 29. I feel like I understood it just because I don't think it's not that cerebral or anything like that. It's a comic book action film, so I was able to follow it fairly well. The background I didn't get at all because there are all these characters who never appeared again. I guess those are the Guardians of the Galaxy. So they disappear in the first 20 minutes at most.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I was wondering where they were and all that. And when you see that, boy, as a viewer, you think, oh, these guys are going to come back at some point, maybe save the day. So all along, when Jane Foster comes back sort of to save the day, I was expecting the Guardians might come back, but that's just my own ignorance of the entire series.
No, that would absolutely make sense within the film, I think. And certainly the trailers seem to heavily imply that the Guardians of the Galaxy were very important characters in the film. So I don't think you would be the only person expecting them to turn up in the final reel.
Yes, it's ultimately just sort of cross-marketing and publicity for the other films, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think what probably would have been helpful is watching the earlier Thor films, because I think that probably explains a lot of what was happening. But I mean, the tone of this film is that there's a little bit of genre jamming, because there's definitely comedy in it, and certainly heavily reliant on action. But I was wondering if the earlier films are that same blend, or is that a Waititi thing? Or?
Yeah, I think the earlier Thor films were considerably more po-faced. So yeah, I think the same is true in the comics as well. Thor is not a great guy for gags, and he has a bit of a kind of like an old-fashioned, slightly stale sense of humor in the comics. And he's reasonably serious most of the time in the earlier movies as well. And it was only when Taika Waititi directed the third Thor standalone film that we were allowing Thor to be funny. So it very much borrows the tone from that third film and not the previous ones. I found this kind of this straddling of tone, a little bit problematic, because it has one foot in comedy and one foot in kind of threat and danger, and it's very difficult, I think, to consistently straddle that border. And so I think, and the danger is that most of the comedy, I think, happens is funny, but most of the threat and the danger and the worry is very quickly undermined by a gag, and you're never really allowed to feel, frightened or feel much pathos or feel like there's any real threat in the film. So I think I felt like that was a little bit of a failing of the story, because I enjoy a joke as much as the next person, but when there's a joke every 20 seconds, it becomes difficult to feel the other emotions that the film is trying to key into.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I mean, I in the blog, I tried to post. I didn't do a very good job of posting it, but I did say, I felt like I was going to be in good hands because I like Waititi and I like his films and his style, and yet his hands, I think, are tied here because you have to hit the Marvel's touchstones, I suppose, which are the action pieces, and then when you're trying to bring in a humor, that it seemed to me like Chris Hemsworth enjoyed that. I don't know if that was a feeling I should have gotten from the actor, but it seems like he's having a fun time, and you said he was a little bit interested in leaving the Thor series. Seems to have fun with some of the comic moments, and the other ones are they're kind of rote moments where you've got to get the action in there. So I felt like, it's difficult. It's a difficult balance, that comedy and that action, and I don't know that it always works for me here.
Reading about the way they made the film, apparently some of the plot points and a lot of scenes involved an awful lot of improvisation, which I feel. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I have the kind of the same reaction to you, which is that improvisation is like the curse of the screenwriter, isn't it? We don't like improvisation. We want people to stick to the script. I spent blood and tears typing these words. Don't now improvise your own words. I want my words. And I think, having read that, it becomes very obvious which bits in the film were probably improvised. I suspect that the whole subplot about the jealous weapon was something that came from improvisation. There are some very funny, amusing scenes where Thor is trying to get his hands on his old hammer, which he still has feelings for, and then his new weapon, his axe, Stormbreaker, will just edge into the outside of the frame, like a jealous lover watching from the background. And that's very funny. But it wouldn't surprise me to learn that all of those scenes and that whole subplot was something that came out of improvisation. You can almost sense that they set the scene up, and there is a grip just off camera who's gently sliding the axe into view with comic timing. What do you feel about improvisation on set? Do you? 'Cause I feel like the two opposite views for this kind of way of working. It's either you like Hitchcock, where absolutely everything in the frame is utterly controlled, or you like Mike Leigh, where things are an awful lot looser and you let the improvisation form the story. Which side of the sword do you fall on, do you think?
I'll take Hitchcock, thank you. Yeah, I think we spend so much time writing and rewriting and redrafting that you end up with a story that you've put so much into and so many people have given you notes on that's what you want to film. At least give it a chance. So that if there is improvisation, it sort of has to be solidified and finalized and then sort of rewritten so that it does deliver. I can't imagine on a big set where you're spending a lot of money improvising stuff and then including it. Like these axe envies in this film, I mean, that's going to lead to perhaps budget overruns because all of a sudden you've got to create a whole new CGI sequence. To a certain extent, it must be sort of ultimately rehearsed and then okayed, I would think. But, I mean, if it's straight improvisation, for me, that's just too much risk. I don't know.
There are some terrific sequences in this film. I came away thinking that the black and white expressionist sequence when they go to the Shadow Realm,
Yeah.
which is this tiny, tiny planet, and they're sort of running around the outside of it, and they're stepping in and out of the shadows, and the sort of the nightmarish monsters, which are sort of out of focus on the horizon. It feels very, very dreamlike. I think, having seen every MCU film they've made so far, I've seen every 29, and I'm not sure I've seen a finer, more cinematic 15 minutes than those 15 minutes of Thor 4. I think that was just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
But
And
equally, I was going to say, I loved the beginning, which is just this scorched earth passage with Christian Bale and his daughter just suffering while eventually he stumbles on his god, who's just living in this lush garden with these crazy creatures around him. And I loved that. I thought that was really profound. When an opening like that just made me think this is going to be a pretty powerful movie.
It's a very elegant setup, isn't it? And especially if you're coming into a film where there's so much baggage and so much background, to give you this kind of nice, quick, elegant setup with a character that you've never seen before, and immediately you understand where he's coming from, what his motivations are. And how he's going to do it. I think actually that is a very skillful bit of setup, skillful bit of writing. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's one other little scene that really stood out for me, which is a really small little moment, which is the scene when Jane is in hospital and Thor comes to visit her, and off screen he obviously completely wrecks the vending machine. When he's kind of trying to get some snacks out for her. It just kind of feels like a very sort of, clumsy demigod sort of thing to do. And that scene, tell you what, actually reminded me of the scene in Arthur from, is it 1981, 1982, with Dudley Moore and John Gielgud in the hospital. And there's this kind of lovely pathos that, Dudley Moore is, another man who finds it very difficult to express himself and is kind of quite childlike, and he's losing somebody that he loves and sort of isn't able to express it, and expresses it through these sort of rather silly gifts that he brings. I thought that, I felt like there was an echo of that. That's the one good scene in Arthur. There was an echo of that scene from Arthur in Thor here.
Yeah.
It's nice when kind of, when you can have like a genuine little bit of understated, emotional weight. So when it does work, it works very well.
Yeah, those scenes did confuse me a little bit, I must say. There's the other one where Jane Foster, where Natalie Portman's character breaks a sink. These moments where they seem very human, yet we're supposed to also accept simultaneously that they're all powerful. And it just seems like I don't know that he would bust up that machine, because in his little village, I mean, it seems like a very normal lifestyle, and they're just walking around the village and the people as if they were just other citizens of the community. And it's just, there's a little bit of a cake and have it too thing going on there that, again, I think it goes along with the sort of the genre jamming of comedy and action together, that you're sort of having it both ways.
There's a couple of things worth noting, I think, about the way the film's turned out. This film, unlike quite a lot of recent Disney releases, I think it does try to make a proper play for diversity. So so we have kind of like Korg, the giant stone man who makes a baby with another guy, and that's how he works. And Valkyrie, I think, I had to look this up afterwards. I think she identifies as bisexual, but she's kind of sort of flirting with one of Zeus's handmaidens.
Yes.
And then at the end of the movie, Thor becomes a single parent family.
Yes,
and the children of Asgard are from every race, from every continent. I think there is a kind of nod to diversity here, which is not the easily edited out nod that we have seen in some other recent releases. I think if you wanted to eliminate all suggestion of diversity in this film, you'd have to cut away a good 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So
and isn't Valkyrie? She's called King Valkyrie, isn't she?
Oh, is that right? Oh man,
yeah,
that even
I don't think she's a Queen Valkyrie.
Yeah. Oh, that passed me by completely. So there you go. So I mean, I think that's actually pretty cute.
Yeah.
So I was glad to see that, but I did come away slightly questioning what the rules were. In this film, because in a film where everything is at stake and we're supposed to worry about whether the gods are going to be killed, and there is a bit of a question mark on, do we really care whether the gods are killed? But in a film where everything is at stake, nobody is able to die. So, like, Korg, the stone character, is killed, but actually,
Yep.
he's just a face and he's still absolutely fine.
Yep.
Jane dies at the end of the movie, but she's not really dead because she goes to Valhalla and will probably come back in another movie. Zeus is obviously killed in this big battle in Omnipotent City, and then at the end of the movie, he's still alive, and someone is cleaning his wounds with a cotton bud, and it makes you think. You feel a little bit cheated.
Yes.
That really there were no stakes then. Any movie that has a wishing well at the center of the universe that will grant any wish is going to run into problems.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish up. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that you're going to run into problems about what are the rules? What's possible? What's not possible? Who lives? Who dies? Actually, the whole thing is up for grabs. Nothing really means anything, and that kind of deflates you. I think a little bit deflates your enjoyment. You were going to say?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that, if they talked about, and maybe I missed this, if they start talking about that wishing well in Act 1, or we get some idea that that's coming up, then it makes it a little easier to accept. It was really hard for me to accept that Gore, when he's dying, can bring his daughter back to life, and you get these last-minute wishes, and then, that Jane Foster can be there with Thor at the end when she's dying, or is she dying? It's just too much at the very end to accept, and the ending for me was problematic because obviously Marvel's trying to set up this next bit with Love and Thunder working together, and they're creating a new superhero, I suppose. And this might come from the comic book, the source material itself. But I find it hard to believe that you would keep the daughter of someone potentially that evil around, that you would raise that child as your own. So for me, that was problematic. It's just it was just too much. That she comes back to life, and here he is killing gods, but able to raise his own daughter from the dead at the very end, at the last minute. So it was just, again, if it comes up earlier, if it's set up somehow, and we'll see that sort of in Jason the Argonauts, where you're granted 5 wishes or whatever, but here it was never set up. That was not part of the agreement that I had between viewer and director and film and writer, so that was disappointing.
I did come away feeling they'd slightly fudged that ending, because I felt there would be a great deal more pathos if the big race to stop Gore from reaching the center of the galaxy or the universe, whatever, is all about stopping him from having this ultimate destructive power. And the way that it seems to play out, as far as I understood it, was that his plan was to use the wishing well to kill all the gods, and then at the very last minute, Thor makes this sort of impassioned speech, and he changes his mind and brings his daughter back. And I felt, well, surely it would have much more emotional impact if the whole intention of his quest was to bring the daughter back.
Yeah, yeah,
and the fact that Thor is there shouldn't be what changes his mind about a parent's deepest wish.
If that was his original desire, that's a very roundabout way of getting there, right? I'm going to take out every god I possibly can before I get to the wishing well, and then get my daughter back. And it seems like he has to make that sacrifice. He can't live and have his daughter come back. It doesn't seem at the very end. So it's there are just some rules there that are introduced to us very, very late in the film that are a little hard to accept. And then there's also love. Love becomes this power at the end. I think it's right very much on the nose that love's going to cure all and help everything. And again, that came at the end, and it was just kind of corny to me. So the last couple of minutes were problematic for me.
It's a shame, because there's plenty to enjoy, and I did come out with a big smile on my face. I went with my daughter, who's a big fan. She's also seen all of the MCU movies, and she's read the comics, and she's kind of really, really into it. And I asked her, if you had one thing to say about Thor that you wanted to point out on the podcast, what would it be? And she said that she felt that Jane, so Thor's girlfriend, who is a character that she's always disliked until this movie, she felt that Jane didn't get enough action of her own. Yeah. And I think actually she's exactly right, that we have like a new Thor now, holding the hammer, wearing the outfit. Yeah. And she's a woman, and yet she doesn't really get to shine and do Thor type stuff on her own. She's always kind of second fiddle to the male Thor. Yeah. She turns up and she backs him up. She's always asking for advice about her catchphrase, but she's never exactly. She's never quite allowed to be, purely superhero on her own. And I agree. I feel like that's actually a little bit of a missed opportunity. I feel like Natalie Portman clearly went to the gym before this movie, and it's a shame she didn't get to flex, properly on her own terms.
Yeah. Do me a favor. Explain the very ending that comes in the credits when Jane is, or maybe before the credits actually. You feel like she's going to come back in a future film. That character.
I was, yeah, kind of surprised and disappointed that she turns up in Valhalla, and it feels to me very much like it's leaving the door open for her to come back.
Okay. And who is that? Who does she see there? I didn't catch that because it was on the way up the theater.
She sees Idris Elba, who plays. Oh, and I'm going to have to look it up now.
Okay.
Uh,
I couldn't tell if it was Chadwick Boseman from Black Panther. I thought that's kind of impossible. But,
oh, that would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Again, I was on the way out, and then I didn't realize I had been told or heard on another podcast that you've got to stay till the very end of these films because there's usually something, and then again the Russell Crowe reappears.
Heimdall, that's it. Here we go. Who is so he is a Norse god who can see all.
Oh,
so he's in charge of the Bifrost, which is like the Norse god's version of the teleporter.
Okay,
that sends people around the galaxy. So I think that's like, it feels like another little Easter egg, and not something that anybody would particularly enjoy if they hadn't seen all the other films that he was in. It just leaves you feeling a little bit nonplussed. Sif, who's the character who gets her arm chopped off. I felt like they missed a they missed a trick there, didn't they? Not having her arm in Valhalla. That was a callback that was begging to be had, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
but they dropped the ball there. Should have been a severed arm gag.
Well, they got. I guess they give to restrain themselves.
So, are you going to be queuing up to? Are you going to be queuing up to see film 31 and 30 and 32 and 33 now? Are you a convert? Do you think?
Do we know what they are or not?
I think they had a big announcement the other day. Actually, I think the next one is going to be Black Panther 2.
Okay. I'll give you my take on the superhero movies because they're obviously very popular right now, and this film I think reaffirms my ideas anyway. I think right now Americans in particular we're like very convinced that we can't do anything to solve our problems, climate change for example, or our electoral system. And that you need big personalities or superheroes to come along and take care of things. And I don't buy that. And a lot of this film to me is that either at the end we get this idea that love will take care of everything or that gods will take care of everything. And honestly, it kind of keeps us in this place where we're waiting for something to come along, whereas we really have to take care of stuff on our own and we've got to make stuff happen. You have to do something in order to get results. And the superhero movies just seem like this... it's almost a permission structure to just eat popcorn and do nothing and then see what happens in the world as opposed to making something happen in the world. So I'm not a fan of the movies in general, but I also think that, especially this one, which really is all about gods, and I found myself rooting for Gore, the god butcher alive. I kind of wanted to see that explored a little bit more, but again, I think it kind of undercut the whole thing where does he kill that many gods? You were saying people don't die, so... he's not that successful. I think he probably, there's this implication that he's killed a few gods on his way to the village before he encounters Thor. But it was interesting. I mean, the thing that makes him evil is this thing about capturing the children and keeping them and holding them ransom, and feels very much like Donald Trump, sort of imprisoning migrant children. So I think again a little bit on the nose, but. I think that's what makes him evil. Otherwise, the idea of taking a look at gods and seeing how powerful they are, obviously Marvel's not going to do that, I don't think, because they are all about the god system. So for me, I'm an atheist. I wanted to see some gods come down or at least be re-examined a whole lot more. And I know you're not going to get that in a Marvel film, but that was sort of the promise of the premise to me, that you've got someone called the God Butcher. You've got to explore that character because I thought Bale was good. I thought his scenes were good. I thought that opening Scorched Earth, I thought that Desolations sequence that you were talking about was great. And it just seemed like there were some godless spots that were really telling, whereas the ones that were god-full were just an action film, ultimately. It wasn't really the promise of this whole idea of someone out to get all the gods. It was never really satisfied for me.
It's curious that during that brief Guardians of the Galaxy sequence, after they do all the battling and the fighting, they have this distress call that, apparently gods are being killed all around the galaxy. And everybody's of one mind. Oh, this is terrible. We must try and stop this. But you're exactly right. You would think that, some people would question whether we really need to interfere there, or maybe the gods have had their time.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So now these films are about teaching people to feel helpless.
Yeah,
that's shocking.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that way. It's like it is just it's permission not to do anything and just wait around for something else to happen. So I just feel like there's a missed opportunity there. Obviously, it's not the film that they want to make, but as a result, I'm not really sure what this film really is for me to understand. What are the big themes? What are the takeaways? What's really going to make me think as I leave the theater?
I mean, I think the theme is probably something to do with, love will conquer all, isn't it? But whether every scene really reinforces that idea, absolutely, I don't know. I think the film is mostly about let's get some crazy gags in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Gags and CGI.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to talk about CGI quickly because it made me think of this one lecture I saw. The town where I grew up as a college, and a graduate came back, and he was showing all of his special effects work on. He worked on the Transformers films, and one of the audience members suggested, these are the pyramids of our time, the Egyptian pyramids, and I immediately thought that's kind of stupid because there's no slave labor involved, and the Transformer movies are not going to be remembered in 2,000 years the way the pyramids are. But I think more importantly, it's like how much human labor and effort goes into creating a CGI sequence that, and this is work done by super smart guys, engineers. These are the kinds of people we actually need to take action. So instead of waiting for gods to do, climate change abatement, these are the kinds of guys that we need to actually work on real issues. And what are they doing? They're making a lot of money. Sure, their parents are proud of them for working on movies and all that, but it's crap. It's just trivial human entertainment that's very fleeting. So whenever I see a CGI heavy film, I just wish those engineers were doing something worthwhile. That's all.
It reminds me of a quote from, of all people, Elon Musk. And I must preface this by saying I do not take all my philosophical thinkings from Elon Musk, but this is a review of his biography. One thing that Elon Musk said was that the problem that faces the world today is that all the clever people go into law, computers, and finance.
Yeah.
Whereas, if those clever people, they just went into medicine and engineering, it would be a hell of a lot better world.
Yeah, precisely. So those are some thoughts that got us thinking, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, got us learning to be hopeless. Let's take a break, and then
let's hear from our
return.
sponsors. Hear from the sponsors.
Hear from some sponsors, and we'll take a trip back to the gods of the 1960s and see whether they were any different to the gods of the 2020s. See you in a minute.
Perfect.
So, Andres, tell me, are you thinking of investing?
Investing in what? With the money?
Well, investing in investments. Every intelligent person is thinking about investing these days. Am I not right? If it feels like I can't open a YouTube video without having some advert at the front of it with a guy saying, "Are you thinking of investing?" Well, I've got some very exciting investing news for you.
Ooh, pray tell.
I am happy to announce that the Two Real Cinema Club will be launching Two Real Cinema Club NFTs. Yep, we're going to be leveraging AI, virtual reality, and the blockchain with a new crypto innovation. Pretty exciting, huh?
Very.
So, Two Real Cinema Club NFTs. It's an absolute surefire, safe investment. So, in a few weeks' time, we will be launching exclusively on all of the crypto markets. So you'll be able to find us on Blockchain Blockbuster. You'll be able to buy us on CAC Vendor, Nobble Market, Bump Derivatives. We'll be on Big Cash Hammer Marketplace. You'll be able to find us in Duff Investments. And also, I'm pleased to say, we'll be launching on Definitely Not a Pyramid Scheme.crypto. all of the most reputable NFT markets. Launching prices will be, you'll be able to buy a Two Real Cinema Club NFT for 5 crypto smacks, or 7.5 Bitcash, or 9 BOG tokens. But preferably, our preferable currency was if you could send us $500 US cash in small used notes. Now, a lot of people, am I right? A lot of people are a little bit skeptical of NFTs. Are you skeptical of NFTs?
I am. The first thing that I understood there was the $500 US cash.
You see, well, the reason that people are skeptical of NFTs is because they don't understand NFTs. You see, people will shrug and they'll say, but it's just a JPEG of a logo. And you say, no, that's completely wrong. It's a JPEG of a logo, but it costs $500. You can't find a safer investment. I'm looking forward to receiving all of your money. Don't forget, bookmark Duff Investments, 2 Real Cinema Club NFTs. Get your cash in.
And we are back, and we're now going to discuss Jason and the Argonauts from 1963.
Oh, yeah.
Directed by Don Chaffee, who I don't really know his work very well at all. Written by Jan Reed, Beverly Cross, and Apollonios Rhodios, who apparently
like Apollo of Rhodes, whatever, isn't it? He's like the original, the original Greek sort of ancient poet.
Yeah, probably a poet who wrote something called the Argonautica.
There's a little bit of trivia. I looked up the writers.
Oh, good.
So they're Beverly and Jan. They're both men.
Oh,
Beverly Cross married Maggie Smith.
Oh,
interestingly.
Oh my God.
And he wrote Genghis Khan. He wrote Clash of the Titans. Jan Reed, I'm guessing it's Jan. Could be Jan. I don't know. He's a Scot. He wrote Dr. Finley's Case Book. Have you ever seen that?
Never heard that.
And he came up with Dixon of Dock Green, which was like a 1960s black and white. It was like CSI Miami, but set in like sort of in London in the 1960s, and very very pedestrian. So someone would lose their cat or something like that. That would be like the main plot for an episode.
Nice.
So that's what those guys did.
Okay. For me, the heroes of the film are kind of Ray Harryhausen on special effects, and then Bernard Herrmann on the score. Bernard Herrmann, of course, was quite well known, did a couple of Hitchcock films in his time, and just a wonderful composer. And those special effects and music elements really make the film quite special, and obviously, sort of a forerunner of all the special effects that are going to come later on in film history. Yeah. It takes place in like ancient Greece, antiquity. I consider this like a costume drama, I guess, the action adventure.
Sword and sandal, isn't it? I think that's what the genre gets called.
Oh, yeah, sword and sandal is another way to say it. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Which is a big thing in like the 60s and early 70s, wasn't it, I think?
Yes, even though Jason losing one sandal is a big part of the film, the setup. But definitely not really genre jamming the way Thor Love and Thunder is. Jason's our protagonist, and his family is killed, and he sort of loses power of his kingdom, so he needs to get a golden fleece, which is in another distant part of the Greek Isles, Colchis, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure this is something I didn't really perfectly understand, was like what the golden fleece is really going to do. It's just the skin of a goat or a lamb or whatnot. But
it's a blonde goat, yes.
Yeah. But with it, he will have some power. He'll be able to kill the king Pelias, or the person Pelias who has stolen his family and his kingdom from him. It's kind of a MacGuffin, I guess, the fleece. It's special, it's cool, and if he finds it, he can kick some ass. So he's off on a journey. Pelias is initially the antagonist, but he kind of fades from the film quickly because this is sort of an adventure film, road trip sort of thing, where Jason assembles the dream team, the Argonauts, and it's kind of like the Marvel films, I guess, in the sense that there's this Guardians of the Galaxy. Here we've got the Argonauts, and it's going to be a super perilous adventure to find this fleece. And it's sort of more actively dictated by the gods than the previous film that we discussed. They're sort of toying with Jason and the Argonauts, and they sort of become both abettors and antagonists, as Zeus and Hera in particular sort of gamble over their fortunes and their journey. So he's got his crew of athletes, including Hercules, who I understand is sort of half god, half human, and a number of athletes. And he gets a ship built called the Argo, and they're going to travel to the ends of the earth, or at least the ends of Greece. They're going to find this fleece. And I wish there'd been a bit more setup on the boat itself, because it just sort of appears already created, but I think that would have been an interesting thing to add. There's a few minutes of time are spent assembling the dream team. They fight each other to prove how tough they are, and it's He's very masculine.
Proto-Olympic Games, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
where they seem to select the candidates. It's
They're
cute.
throwing discuses and throwing javelins and wrestling and all that. And it ultimately sort of becomes just a young man on a revenge mission story. We've got a lot of interaction between humans and gods. And as I said, well, there's one half god on the crew of Argonauts, Hercules. He's got to get this fleece if he's going to get revenge and sort of restore his kingdom or his domain. Acastus, I lost this in the story at some point. Apparently Acastus is Pelias's son. Did you know that early on when he was trying out, when he was doing his...
I did. I recognized him from like the early Pelias scene where Jason walks off a few yards and then Pelias' son turns up and says,
Acastus,
"But don't you know who that is, Father?" And Pelias says, "That's why I'm going to send him to the other side of the world so he won't trouble me."
Okay, so I didn't catch on there. So that was a nice surprise for me later in the film that we'll get to in a moment. But it seems like on the initial part of the journey, Castus and Hercules, when they come to this the island of Bronze, they offend Talos specifically, and he wants to get revenge, this god Talos. And this is where the visuals really start to kick in.
Yeah.
He's this stone statue that just becomes an enormous sort of walking god, and he's ready to destroy the Argonauts. And Jason has Hera sort of as his guardian god, I suppose, and she implores them to fight with wits and not just with courage. So they attack Talos' foot, and then they can repair the ship and move on. But it's quite a stunning sequence for the early 60s in terms of the visuals, and I want to talk about the visuals a little bit at the end, because I'm sure you have a lot of good points on it as well. But, again, today it would look hokey. In 1963, this is 60 years ago, I think it would have been very surprisingly accurate or surprisingly impressive.
State of the art, yeah.
Yeah. About the middle of the film, they end up on the island of Phrygia, where this blind man, I believe Phineas, is going to help them find the fleece. If they can free him from these demon harpies who Zeus has stuck on him. It's really quite sad, because every time he picks up a sandwich or anything to eat, these harpies come down. They've got flying wings. They're sort of like humans with wings, and they're pretty badass, and they just eat his food or scattered around. And apparently he's just been a sinner. And at one point Phineas says to Zeus, "Why do you punish me every day?" But Jason can help him by trapping the harpies, and then he will share some information. He just tells him that you're going to have to go through these straits, and it's very difficult, and you'll probably die. And throughout the film, the gods are sort of looking down, I guess, from Mount Olympus. Hera and Zeus in particular commenting, and they sort of get these wagers going back and forth, and Hera can help them a little bit, but Zeus doesn't want to, and he throws obstacles in their way. But they move on, and they eventually get into between these cliffs that are sort of crumbling, and it's really impossible to pass through there. But Poseidon, this is another big visual moment. Poseidon sort of bursts up in between. He's way bigger than the cliffs and the boats and all that, and he sort of holds back the cliffs as the Argo passes through. And it just feels like, again, here you've got gods interfering for good as much as for evil. And humans, we understand that we have free will, but gods are going to move around us, and they can ultimately call the shots. That's an interesting take. Poseidon, eventually lets them pass through, and then he sort of disappears right back into the sea. So the implication is that Hera has raised him, and he'll go back. But they lose Hercules at about this point, and he's going back to try and fetch someone because he feels guilt because someone died because he made a mistake. And Hercules just sort of disappears at that point.
Yeah,
but
he
so
just
does
disappears.
Castus disappears a little after this, but not before they pick up the very hot Medea, who is from Colchis. She's sort of just drowning, apparently the same storm or the cliff crumbling that doomed the Argo really took out her ship, and they take her back to Colchis. So very, very conveniently, she happens to be an important member of the Colchis community, so they have her on board. But Acastus, Pelias, the enemy of Jason, his son, wants to mutiny against Jason, and some swashbuckling ensues. There's some swords and whatnot. And it seems like Acastus is, he goes into the water and sort of just disappears. So we assume he's dead. Keep an eye open. We're going to come back to him, though. Sort of the following action of the story. We get to Colchis. The fleece is there. Medea helps save Jason from the king, who has imprisoned them because he knows they want the fleece. So the king sort of welcomes them at first, but then ends up imprisoning them because he knows they are dangerous and they want the fleece. So she's able to help Jason escape. The Hydra, another great sequence. The six-headed serpent kills Acastus when he goes for the fleece all by himself. We see the fleece. It's sort of gold. It's hanging in a tree just as was predicted. And he suffers karma. That bastard had it coming. 6 heads of Hydra just taking him down. The Argonauts are sort of able, as a team, to sort of kill Hydra. King, is it Aeetes? Aeetes or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Aeetes.
Yeah, he's the king of Colchis. He has his men take out Hydra's teeth, which is really weird because they're apparently they're great weapons. And Medea sort of is killed, but the Hydra teeth also have the power to heal. So
no, it's the golden fleece that heals.
Oh, is it the gold? That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's the golden fleece that
heals
her.
her.
Yeah. That's right. So
they put it on her like a sleeping bag, don't they?
That's
and
right.
It just magically gets better. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It starts glowing and all that because the fleece does change from sort of black and white almost, or color. Eventually, it really goes gold when they need it to do stuff. So it's a beautiful sort of thing. Then the skeleton soldiers come, which is pretty cool. They're battling Jason. The nice thing here is, though, that logic sort of prevails because you need fat to float, and the skeletons have none. So they do sort of sink into the sea in many cases. They're a little bit scary, though. Again, another great little sequence of visuals. They get the fleece. Medea and Jason have this undeniable chemistry, so it looks like they might fall in love. Zeus makes it very clear there'll be more adventures awaiting Jason and the whole gang, and it's sort of like this classic sequel stage-setting moment. Now, I didn't see future Jason films. This was the first time I saw this one. Do you remember? You said you saw this one a lot on television. Were there others that followed?
This film was on television. It felt like every week when I was a boy. Yeah. It's certainly like every school holiday, every Easter, every Christmas. It would always be wheeled out. Now we would probably always watch it, and some of these sequences are really impressed very deeply on my young mind.
Yeah.
So the kind of the terror when the giant bronze statue of Talos starts moving.
Yeah,
it's such a great moment. It's fantastic. I remember the first time, and to that whole idea of unscrewing his heel and all this lava pouring out of him just burned into my memory. There was no sequel, though.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, they escaped to the ship, and it really looks like there should be a sequel, doesn't it? And
yes.
I presume that the reason that Hercules disappears is so that he can come back in the sequel and save the day. And
exactly.
It feels like lots of things are set up for the sequel, but no sequel ever happens.
No sequel happens.
The film didn't actually make an absolute packet on theatrical release, and it sort of became a classic after the fact, I think, when it came on 70s TV.
The special effects by Ray Harryhausen they're great. They're just believable special effects. It's not something that's going to wow any viewer today, but I liken them to being sort of, we talk about artisanal beers and cheeses now here in the States. It's like artisanal movie making. It's just lovely. You can see, I suppose some of them are like claymation of sorts, and there's a lot of stuff where they're obviously superimposing what they're doing in a studio onto something that they've already filmed. It's just ingenious. That's what I like about it. It's not, today you can just sit in front of a computer and crank something out. They had to be thinking of how they were going to do stuff and make it match with film, and it's just more human. They're doing much more with less.
Artisanal is the word, apparently. I read about this. Apparently, he was basically a one-man show. Ray Harryhausen did everything on his own. Yeah. The only person he had to help him was his mum, who made the tiny costumes for the models.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, he just did it just himself.
It's
incredible.
Great, yeah. And the miniatures are fantastic. I love anything when they're using miniatures. It really works really well. So for me, I really enjoyed this film. It's not layered with tons of stuff. It's an action adventure. I mean, it's no less layered, I guess, than the average Marvel film is. And another thing is Russell Crowe, I think, is in both films because his Zeus in Thor is very much like his Zeus 60 years earlier. I mean, they look almost exactly the same.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's wonderful.
This is clearly where they got the inspiration, I suppose, for the new Thor film.
The one thing I loved was there was a theme stated moment with Zeus. He says, "In time, all men shall learn to do without them." He's talking about gods. And I love that. 60 years later, I don't think it's true, but it means we have to wait a lot longer before we, all men and humans, can live without gods. But I think there's some great points in terms of, like, the gods are among us. I kind of like that whole ancient Greek thing that the gods are more human than some of our Western gods are.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, but I also love this trickery that we think we have free will. This is like I think a foundation of so much religion, that there's this trickery that we think we have free will, but ultimately the gods will have their way with us.
There's, I must say, ancient Greek gods are just the kind of gods that I can get behind, because they are, absolutely just human scaled up, aren't they? They are kind of petty and venal and jealous and lazy and all the things that humans are.
Yeah, we're made in their image, right?
Yeah, yeah. This film has a great sense of scale. That's one of the things I've written in like big letters on my notes here. Scale, just like the scale of the monsters, the scale of like the monuments, the scale of the clashing rocks, the scale of the gods. There's this sequence where Jason is taken up to Olympus. I mean, he's like a tiny little chess figure.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's
standing
right.
in front of the gods. It's a lovely sequence.
Yeah.
It's just sort of beautifully done, and you can see it's like a simple little bit of sort of old-fashioned green screen or matting, whatever. But they're really consistent with it. I think it's really, really good. I watched this film with the children, so all of us sat down to watch it together. And for the first sort of 15 minutes, they were laughing, and they kept saying, "Oh my God, the graphics!" Is what they were saying. But after that, they really settled into it and enjoyed it.
Course,
and I think, and I think even for them, some of these stop motion sequences, still really involving and exciting, just fantastic. As far as writing goes, I think there's a couple of really notable, interesting things about the writing in this film. First of all, I struggle to think of a film which better illustrates the hero's journey.
Yep.
The hero's journey is that could be the subtitle of the film, isn't it? It's absolutely it's hero's journey, isn't it?
Yes.
And so he has his kind of his allies and his monsters, and he goes to the innermost cave, and it looks like all is lost, and then he's released by an ally, and all those kind of those classic story points. They hit them one by one, and I'm presuming that this film was scripted long before somebody came out and codified the hero's journey that all screenwriters and all business schools write about these days. But it's absolutely there on the screen, isn't it? Mm-hmm. The other thing I really like about the script on this film is the way that it sets its stall out really clearly. So right from the beginning, like, it's really obvious what the hero wants, what he needs, and how he's going to do it, and what's going to get in his way. Yeah. They make it just kind of so clear that children following along know what's at stake and know what's going to happen and can look forward to it. And they have this brilliant gimmick that Hera, the goddess, has this deal with her husband Zeus that she can help Jason 5 times, and they really underline this. You can only help him 5 times.
That's right. Yep.
And so you think, but these 5 wishes, they're going to be, we're going to count them off over the film, and yet very cleverly, they're all used up by the midpoint.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm kind of in the audience. I'm willing Jason to say, don't use up another wish. You've only got 5. Hold on to a couple, and he uses them all up, and then it means that the second of the film is so much more exciting because he's got no more wishes. Right. And it's like the stakes. It's really simple, elegant way of raising the stakes.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating because there are a couple wishes that seem really banal. It's like,
it's exactly.
Can we have candy right now? Yeah. So they do feel wasted, but. Yeah, it raises the stakes, doesn't it? Like, you've got to go get this fleece without any more divine intervention.
Yeah, it's a great, really clever technique, something that, I can't recall seeing used in a more recent film. But, it's very cute. The other thing that really impressed me with this film was the way that the bodies of film stars have changed since the 1960s.
Yeah.
Because these just like a bunch of ordinary kind of slightly chubby middle-aged blokes.
Yeah.
Who look like the most exercise they do is a bit of gardening on a Sunday.
Yes.
And get them in shorts and some sandals, maybe a toga if they're lucky. And I'm sure filming this film was a blast. Apparently it was filmed mostly around like the Italian coast.
Yeah.
And I bet they had a great time. They all look so tanned. I bet they had a fantastic time out in the sunshine for 8 weeks making this movie, running up and down the beach in their sandals.
Yeah.
But the body of Hercules in this film looks like the body of a completely different species compared to the body of Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, oh my
in
God,
Thor:
Chris
Love
Hemsworth.
and Thunder.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is there is a scene where in Thor: Love and Thunder where at the beginning of the film he's in a state of depression and he's been inactive, and I think even the voiceover suggested he had dad bod, and he had to move it to god bod. But he's fat and kind of very flabby and in the early going, and then he does some training and builds his body back. But Chris Hemsworth is huge compared to the Hercules of yore. Yeah.
I mean, almost sort of CGI huge. You start to think, wait a second, is that really a human body? Is that possible?
I don't think so, yeah.
I wonder.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, and one other point I must make about this film, and tell you one thing about Jason and the Argonauts. In Jason and the Argonauts, when people die, they are actually dead.
For the most part, right? Acanthus comes back. I think they've thought he's going to drown.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but the way that's set up, that he falls into the sea and, he's probably a good swimmer. It's not a massive surprise to see him again.
Yeah.
Whereas, when people are stomped on by the giant bronze statue, they don't dust themselves off and climb back in the boat. They are goners, which means that there are real proper stakes in this film, and
and Hercules experiences genuine regret when that guy dies because he feels like it's his fault, and then he disappears too, and you're wondering, well, Hercules is dead. If he's half god and he can die, I agree with you.
Proper human emotion and not undermined by a gag.
Yeah, very different, very different. A great pairing of films, though. I really enjoyed it, and I'm kind of glad to see this film that you saw so much growing up, because I had never seen it. I definitely heard it. I've heard of the stories, but I had never seen it, so it was great to get that little piece of your life from growing up at the same time that I did, but with completely different films.
They do have a few things in common, don't they? This idea of kind of gods and their interference in the world of man.
Yes.
But the way that they approach it is quite different, isn't it? I am quite sobered by your observation that Thor: Love and Thunder is an invitation to relinquish your responsibility and let the gods sort it out.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Jason and the Argonauts is telling you, what, you can do it. You can do it with the gods. You can do it without the gods. You can do it when the gods are against you. Just get in your boat and do it.
Yep. Yeah.
That was the attitude in the 1960s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a nice metaphor. You might get some help from the gods depending on how you believe and what you believe, but they're not going to do it all for you.
They might deliberately make it worse.
Precisely.
So these are the kinds of gods that I can get behind. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
No distress call. Yeah, it's just bloody do it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, do you feel tempted to try and seek out any other Ray Harryhausen movies? I think there is a bunch, isn't there? I think.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do a Google search. He's obviously something of a, a godfather of the special effects world. So again, the stuff he was doing in '63 with very limited resources is very impressive.
Yep, absolutely. Still stands up. Absolutely. Good. Well, that's been our journey to the world of gods and back.
Yeah.
Bit of sword and sandal, always good fun. And let's hope you will join us for the next episode when we'll maybe find something a little bit more down to earth.
Absolutely.
But until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, and goodbye.
Bye, everyone.